Welcome, bienvenue, willkommen, benvenuto, benvenido, sveki, that's a new one I just learned, dia yiv akorja. Anybody knows what that one is? Take a wild guess. Correct, gold star to you, I'm Irish. I go through that not to show you what an amazing linguist I am, but to give you a demonstration of just a handful of the languages that we ourselves speak here in the delegation. We have just 50 colleagues here. There are a lot of languages spoken here all the time. Actually quite a few Irish, so it's very handy to have the Gaelic when we don't want people to know what we're talking about. But it's very appropriate, I think, given that we are marking the European Day of Languages. And it's the first time that we've been able to mark it here in the delegation because of COVID and various other hurdles. But given that it's been on the go now for over 20 years, we're really, really pleased to be able to do this event. We've had a wonderful exhibition all day, which has been basically hosted by our member state embassies, by the EU National Institutes of Culture, teachers, students, and others, and also countries beyond the EU. So we've had Turkey, we've had the Faroe Islands, and it's been a really interesting and engaging experience to go around the stands and hear how languages are being thought, to see what kind of materials are used, and engage with people there. So I really recommend, if you haven't had the time, to go around some of the stands after this event and see what's going on. A quick word basically about why we treasure multilingualism so much. Essentially, across Europe, this is a really important and fundamental part of our cultural heritage. It's also a really important part of identity, which I think anyone here who speaks a foreign language will understand. For me, as an Irish person, I know as a child, me and my classmates really resented having to learn Irish. It's one of those things, you're like, why are we learning this language? Nobody speaks it, etc. But now that I'm an adult, I really value having it, especially now that I live and work abroad. Having Irish and being able to speak Gaelic is such an important part of my identity and so valuable. So I really understand why a day like this is important. And it's also really, for the European Union, a really important part of our transparency. As you know, we publish all of our legislation in 24 official languages. And that's our way of making sure that every EU citizen can get the information they need about the European Union, which essentially works in their interests. So this is a very important day for us. It's a very important day for Europe. And I would make one final observation, and my fellow diplomats here will understand this, which is that learning foreign languages helps you to build bridges with others and understand them better. And that is an essential part of our work as diplomats, but I think as global citizens, it's also an essential task for all of us. So, it's never too late to learn, is my message. There's loads of material out there if you fancy learning another language, so please, I encourage you to go and have a look. And with that, I'm going to wish you a very pleasant evening. Ganairi an bóthar liv galéir, which means good luck to all of you. And I'll hand over now to you, Penny. Please, Penny, our Aspen coordinator, you have the floor. Thank you.
Very quickly, I just also wanted to say welcome. I'm Penny Richards. I'm the head of the Aspen Institute here in the UK. And as the Deputy Ambassador said, hasn't it just been a joy to see an extraordinary range of languages and that idea of people connecting to others here today? It's just such a pleasure and a blessing, I think, to have this in London. The Aspen Institute partners with the EU Delegation here in the UK to help them host some of their public programming. We really relish bringing people together we really relish bringing people together, but we also really relish bringing always the top experts in whatever field we're discussing. We get some of the UK's top experts, and we get some of Europe's top experts to discuss a range of fascinating topics, and clearly today is absolutely no exception. Our speakers always stretch our minds, and they help us do what we think we do best, which is have fascinating conversations with a range of interesting people and who all have diverse perspectives. In a nutshell, the Aspen Institute in the UK believes that dialogue is essential in any language to both improve our understanding and to find common solutions to some of the most pressing challenges we have at the moment. and dialogue in different languages, we know how critical they are to learning about different perspectives, different cultures and different geographies. We know languages can enrich our understanding of the world and help us build bridges, as you said, to so many countries, societies and people, which is why today is so fitting that we're exploring that with an extraordinary panel. So it's my privilege to introduce Professor Neil Kenny. He's the Professor of French at the University of Oxford and until very recently was the British Academy's Lead Fellow for Languages. So you will understand how we were so thrilled that he accepted our invitation, and we know he's going to lead an extraordinary conversation. Professor Kenny, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Well, hello everyone, and hello everyone online as well. And I just want to thank the EU Delegation to the UK in partnership with the Aspen Institute for providing us with this opportunity to discuss how and why the UK, as well as its increasing its proficiency in languages from across the world, should crucially celebrate and increase its proficiency in European languages. Across the UK as a whole, in England, in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, with their distinct education systems, which were incorporated into a proposed blueprint for a UK-wide languages strategy that the British Academy, the British Council and others put out 3 years ago. If you'd like to look at that, just Google towards a national languages strategy, incorporating the 4 jurisdictions. Today we'll mainly discuss 2 sectors: mainstream schools, where language learning should be part of core general education for all, and supplementary or complementary schools, where usually on Saturdays, many children of the millions of EU citizens who live in the UK learn to read and write, as well as speak, the language of their parents or carers. But beyond those 2 sectors, although we'll mainly focus on them, we really shouldn't forget today how crucial it is to have healthy pathways for a proportion of learners to continue studying languages and the associated cultures at university, so that the UK has a really good pool of advanced expertise and of future teachers as well. So first we'll hear from 4 people who've done a huge amount for language learning, and after that we'll really want to hear from you, the audience. First of all, to introduce them, Joan Deslandes is a head teacher of Kingsford Community School in East London, a secondary co-ed with international school status, and Joan has been the real pioneer of languages provision as a key plank within her influential wider work on inclusivity, on equality, and on transformation in education, work that's been recognised by an OBE and numerous other public accolades. Next, Vicky Goff is the British Council's dynamic lead on modern languages in schools. She's managed many programmes, many activities which support the teaching and learning of languages in the UK, programmes that really highlight that intercultural dimension of language learning and that motivate young learners. Vicky also oversees the Language Trends Survey, which gives us a real snapshot of what's happening with languages in schools. Next, Bernadette Holmes, MBE, is the director of the National Consortium for Languages Education at University College London. Bernadette has made numerous really major contributions to languages education, including in curriculum and policy development. Bernadette is Vice President of the Chartered Institute of Linguists, Director of Speak to the Future, and she's consultant to the Department for Education on the development of the GCSE in British Sign Language. Kasia Kowalczyk is a trustee at the Polish Educational Society and a translator. Kasia's lived in the UK for almost 25 years, and for the past 15 has been very associated with education within the UK's Polish community. She does really important work liaising with examination boards, with publishing houses, and with organisations that support higher education. So I'm delighted to introduce the panel to you, and I'll start off by asking Vicky, if I may, just to tell us in a nutshell what's happening according to language trends with European languages in schools at the moment.
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me for this panel. So I'm going to talk about language trends, particularly looking at England, and talk about what's happening at languages in England at the moment. So currently, only half of the cohort take a GCSE in a language. So that's the exam that you do at 16 in England. So only half the cohort take a language. That means about half stop at age 14. Most people start learning languages at 7, and between 7 and 14, it's part of the national curriculum that you should be studying a language. The Department for Education has an aspiration to increase this number up to 90%. But you can see there's quite a big gap between the current 50% and the 90% that the department wants. However, Bernadette and I are involved in one of the initiatives that they've announced to try and push this forward. So at GCSE, so age 16, French is the most popular language qualification taken, but that's likely to be overtaken by Spanish in the next year or so. And German lags behind that a bit, so lower numbers for German. At A level, so the exam at 18 years old, Spanish is the most popular. But the numbers taking languages qualifications at A level is really small. So compared with the hundreds of thousands taking maths, for example, it's quite small numbers for languages. Looking at languages other than the big three, French, German and Spanish, which are the most taught in England, the next biggest in terms of numbers at GCSE are Mandarin, Polish, Arabic, Italian, Portuguese and Urdu. So Mandarin is taught in quite a lot of mainstream schools and has big support from the Department for Education with financial backing and so on. In terms of other European languages, Polish is the most taught, but mostly taught at supplementary or complementary schools, as I imagine that we'll hear earlier. So schools often set up by the community. In some cases, mainstream schools will facilitate the taking of the exam in the GCSE, but not all will. So that's still a bit of a struggle. And schools, mainstream schools, might not know how to support those pupils to do well in the exam as well. So that's a big issue, the information flow about how mainstream schools could help young people take qualifications in other languages. Other European languages in which you can get a GCSE, Italian, for example, which is also taught in a few, but not very many, mainstream schools. And Portuguese, again, is a language that's often taught in supplementary settings. We know that there are a whole range of other European languages that are taught in community settings, but you can't get an exam for them, so you won't find them in mainstream schools. So one question you might ask is, why don't English schools teach a wider range of languages? And there's a lot of answers to that, partly to do with the pressure schools have on achieving results. And to achieve results, you have to get examinations. So if there isn't an examination in that subject, they're much less likely to put school resource into it, particularly now at a time when resources are tight for schools due to a whole range of different reasons. And then there are issues around teacher supply and resources which make it often challenging to teach languages other than those big three of French, German and Spanish. So that's a tiny snapshot of where we are now. I hope that's helpful.
That's really great. Thanks, Vicky. And before we get on to discussing what we can do to improve the situation, I wonder whether it's worthwhile pausing to ask, why does it matter to improve it? I imagine that in most cases, all cases here, one might be preaching to the converted, but I think it's really important to clarify to ourselves so we can clarify to others why it really does matter. And so I'm going to ask the other panelists for really short answers to that question. Joan, I wonder if I could begin with you. Why in your school and in other schools does it matter that students do language learning? And for socially deprived children, why does it matter if they miss out on language learning?
Well, language learning not only opens doors, but it opens mindsets. It helps develop respect. It ensures that people have an understanding of one another, and also learning languages develops really important employability skills, which for young people from socially deprived backgrounds is really, really important. The challenges that we have has already been laid out by what Vicky has just said. But I think for schools to equip young people to be effective contributing citizens, not just here in the UK, but with their closest neighbours, that is our brothers and sisters in the EU, it is essential that European languages are maintained in schools as an offer that pupils can access. I know, like other head teachers, schools often worry about the performance tables, the league tables, how their pupils are going to perform, and languages are perceived as being very difficult in comparison to other subjects. However, if you have well-qualified teachers with excellent teaching expertise, that is easily overcome. Our challenge is the shortage that we have of teachers here in the UK who are able to teach the GCSE framework, and that framework's very narrow and it is organised in a way to fail 40% of the intake, so we have to also consider those things.
Great, thanks. That's opened up a range of really important issues, perhaps some of which we'll come back to. Many thanks. So still wondering why it matters. Kasia, could I ask you, why is it important for students to learn Polish in supplementary, complementary schools, in other heritage settings, Saturday schools, or indeed in some cases at home?
So first of all, I would like to thank you to whoever organized me or anyone from the Polish community actually being part of this panel, because for me and for many other people this is quite an extraordinary moment. I'm representing Polish Educational Society, an organization which has been working in the UK for the last 70 years. So an organization which is helping to establish and run schools. I like the two terms, supplementary and complementary. So Saturday schools, so I represent community, a group of people who firmly believe for many, many years that actually maintaining our heritage, our language is part of heritage, is part of is a must, yes, in order to maintain our identity, in order to become better at pretty much anything you want to be, because it's important. I can speak from my experience at school. So it is extremely important for young people to form friendships, to be able to communicate with others, to be able to keep in touch with families, to be able to and get to know different literature in their language. To be able to pass the exams and be part of that, actually use that knowledge and be integrated part of the communities they live in. I'm not sure whether this is what's.
That's a wonderful answer. Thanks very much.
A lot of people who actually work in Saturday schools, Polish Saturday schools, are true passionates, and most of them they do it as the schools are charities, and so we couldn't. I could not be sort of. I wouldn't be able to actually, in 2 or 3 minutes, to describe, the passion and the love we have for teaching the language.
Well, we will definitely come back to those questions, but thanks for that opening flavour of just why it is so important. So far, we've talked a lot about the benefits to individuals. I wonder whether we could think also about what benefits, if any, there are to society more widely. And Bernadette, I wonder whether you could have a go at answering that question, whether the benefits are in terms of raising general educational attainment, or whether they're economic and other workplace benefits. Would you like to have a go?
Thank you, Neil. Well, firstly, good evening, everybody. I feel immensely privileged to be here with such a distinguished panel, and that was a wonderful answer that you gave, because at the heart of it all, it's about people and the people that we create and support through our education system. That's the most important thing. But I'll broaden it out, if I may. Yes, of course there are educational benefits, and I think we all here are convinced that every child, irrespective of where they are in the country, irrespective of their social background, should have the opportunity to expand, to extend their horizons, and to see the world through another linguistic and cultural lens. That's terribly important. I think it's transformative, and I know that you probably all share that belief with me. So it's about the role of education to support the personal and cultural and cognitive development of children. So that is all within the education arena. And to create citizens who are respectful, as Joan said, who understand that it's arbitrary, the language that you speak first. It's a totally arbitrary thing. So it shouldn't mean that you have privilege because you happen to speak a world language as distinct from a less spoken language. An endangered language, for example. All of our languages are important. And that's critical that we have that kind of awareness within our education system. So yes, we have the taught languages of the curriculum. They happen to be mostly in the English setting, French, German and Spanish. But equally, we have other languages which are being introduced, as we mentioned. We hope to introduce more Polish support as well, and for all of the languages that are spoken within our community. 1 in every 5 children speaks another language, brings with them knowledge of another language and culture. So we will be coming back to that, I know. Now, for the broader society, which is the question that Neil asked me to address, there are economic benefits to having other languages. Now, that is a difficult argument for those who speak English in particular. It's also difficult for those who also speak world languages that actually don't need, in a sense, anything other than their main language. That's particularly the case for English. Why is it, therefore, that I would say it is fundamental to our progress that English-only speakers do acquire other languages? Well, the first thing to avoid is the very thing around communication. If you think that you have a global language which is shared by many, you make no allowances whatsoever for the vocabulary that you use, the cultural references that you use, the commonplaces that you use. You make no allowances for the fact that everyone else in a room, if you're in a multilingual, plurilingual context, will not necessarily share those cultural references. They will not have the same commonplaces and common experience as you, and they will not see the world through the same cultural lens. That's the first thing you need. Let's talk about business. It's the first thing you need if you are talking about global Britain and global business and competitive markets, well, reach out, please. Look for your customers' preferences, your clients' needs, your sensitivities to others, because that's really what it's about. It's about understanding diversity and recognizing that you are not the kingpin in the room. You are not. We need to reach out and communicate with everybody to be inclusive and respectful of all of the people who are surrounding us. And I think we all know that when we're in a situation where we are using a language which is not our first, you really have to think very closely and carefully to make sure that your meaning is clear. Are the words you are using really conveying the true essence of what you need to say? So for every learner, wherever they are, as I say, irrespective of their background, that is an experience they need, so that they become aware of what language actually is, of how to respect your audience, your interlocutor, to really understand what it is to communicate effectively. So that's the first thing. And in business, what we certainly need to do is to understand also that something that works for one culture will not work in another. So there really is an economic case in that sense that we need to think about. Soft power and influence. I think we know, and I'm going to quote from David Cornwall, John le Carré, who some of you may have had the great privilege and pleasure to hear addressing one of the cultural events recently at the German embassy before he died, obviously. And he said something really wonderful which has stuck with me. In fact, he said two things which stuck with me from that particular event. The first thing he said was his love of German was love from the first sound. Now that tells us something about methodologies and pedagogies and the experience that children have of learning languages. They need to live these languages, they need to hear them, and they need to respond to the sound, the cadence, the poetry of them all. That's terribly important. Never forget that when we're thinking about pedagogic initiatives and innovations, or what research tells us. Bear that in mind. The other thing that he also said was that to learn another language is to reach out the hand of friendship to other people. That's why, for every single child, the opportunity to learn another language is a crucial part of their personal, social and cultural development. I could say something around cognitive benefits, Neil, but maybe I should stop.
Perhaps hopefully we'll have time to get to them because they're vital too, but thanks so much for those inspiring answers. And yes, and what you just said about the hand of friendship is something that does not happen through AI and machine learning and Google Translate, much as those bring, nor do the cognitive benefits happen through those means. Let's get constructive then. How can we improve things? And I wonder if we could think first about mainstream schools and then about supplementary, complementary schools, and then perhaps about the connection potentially between them. So here's just throwing out a question to the panel, who would ever like to have a go at it first. If we think about mainstream schools, primary potentially as well as secondary, how can we improve the extent of language learning in the UK, its inclusivity and its quality? And I know that some of the panelists are involved in initiatives around those. So would any of you like to join,
Yes.
please?
So we work very closely with our local primary schools, and where we have shortages of teachers in particular subjects, we come together as head teachers to work out how we can facilitate the curriculum to ensure that pupils can maintain and continue with the study of foreign languages right up to sixth form. One of the big challenges, and one of the things that I find quite disappointing, however, is that Europe are our neighbours, and there are a number of languages that are spoken in Europe which are not recognised by our examination system. We support those pupils. Polish is amongst the languages that is in our league table framework, but there are other languages such as Lithuanian, Latvian, which are not in the framework, and pupils have those talents, they have those skills, which in a sense our education system is not recognising. I have asked my head of languages to reach out to find out more about how they can therefore gain a qualification from the country in the language in the way that the Chinese have done. UK children are able to take the HSK Chinese qualification here in our schools, but that is associated with the great support that the UK schools get from the British government to support the teaching of Mandarin, particularly through something known as the Mandarin Excellence Programme. It's an expansion programme. Most of our pupils, many of them at some stage, will want to either travel and work in Europe. They will want to have dialogue for a wide range of reasons. They may meet someone who they fall in love with and marry. That's what happened with our head of languages. That's what brought him into learning a language, and he did that through his first exchange programme when he was 14. But I do believe that it's important that we are reaching out, as has already been mentioned. What we do as a school, our pupils are able to go on work experience in Europe. Some of it is funded through various programmes that are available to schools, but there is insufficient information about them being pushed out to the schools. It's only if you actually seek it out that you actually get to learn about these things. The benefits, though, that it gives to our young people, not just in terms of employability, but that cultural understanding, that awareness, that ability to be a global citizen cannot really be expressed in words. You'd have to see and meet those young people for them to give you the feedback. It is quite moving as they speak about it. The other great thing is through teaching foreign languages in our schools, European languages, we're placing knowledge, understanding, awareness, respect in the place where it is best placed, which is in the hearts and minds of our young people. And they want this, but we need to support it through the work that we're doing. And there are barriers. We need to find the way to reach over those barriers, climb over those barriers. It is possible if we put our minds to it, and if we're working in collaboration to do that, it is more easier to actually get the result we are seeking.
Thanks so much, Joan. You've shown the impossibility, really, of separating the world of mainstream schools from the world of the home and from what students may be doing in Saturday schools and so on. So to modify slightly, therefore, the suggested order, I wonder if I could ask Vicky to say something about that really important issue of accreditation of languages, particularly of ones that are not available as GCSEs. Vicky?
Yeah. The British Council and the Association for Language Learning are working together with a number of other partners, including Bernadette, on a group looking at home, heritage and community languages and looking at are there other forms of accreditation that we could use. So, for example, the Qatar Foundation International has been working with an American program linked to the Seal of Biliteracy. That's an online program that gives you can give you a qualification in the language that you are able to produce. You don't have to learn a syllabus. It's what language can you produce, and it will link you to a scale on the Common European Framework. But that's just one example, and there are others. So we are really trying to work together to find some solution to this, because as you say, it's unfair that some languages you can get some sort of accreditation for and some that you can't. So hopefully this is something that we can work together to try and find some kind of solution for.
And if I could just add, at one stage, probably about 20 years ago, there was a qualification called the Languages Ladder. Yeah. And it was a qualification that validated what the children knew in the foreign language. So the pupils could see the purpose. We know that there are many more purposes other than qualifications, but they actually got validated for what they knew. And children do need that type of feedback as well in terms of when they're developing as young people, to know that what they're doing is valued, it's seen as useful, it's recognised.
Yeah, and it also that helps continue to motivate those young people to want to continue with that language, because often it can be difficult as they get into teenage years and there's lots of other competing pressures on their time. To be able to motivate them to continue with their home language, I think is really important.
Yes. Could I say something around the whole question of language co-activation? So, if you have children who are bringing with them other languages, What we now know about language learning and the acquisition of language is that any language you have within your repertoire is activated when you communicate. So as I'm talking to you, I'm also thinking of French, I'm also thinking of German, and I'm thinking of the other languages that I know. So that's happening in the brain all the time. Now, okay, we have 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, if we're lucky, at the Key Stage 3, which I'll just make sure everyone understands that the arrangements here. In England, that is from age 11 to 14. So we might have 2 hours. You're really lucky, you might have 3 hours. And it tends to be a silo where the language which is chosen for the curriculum language is taught. There is no connection made with the children who have other languages to the other languages within their repertoire. None whatsoever. Now that's one thing which we need to change, because as we know in many of our classrooms, not only in cities but right the way across the country, there are many children who are bringing in other languages into the classroom. So that's the one thing we need to do. For those who are only bringing one language, okay, that's also enriching for them to understand how languages work and to have an experience sharing with their partners. Now, does it mean we take time out of the very limited time for the single language, or if you're lucky, 2 languages they might be learning? No, it doesn't. You can find multilingual spaces within your curriculum. And we don't do that in this country, and we need to. I was very fortunate to work with a colleague who's sitting in the front row here, Catherine Ames, and we were working with schools in her work, in her network that she is supporting, and we talked to children, plurilingual children, about their experiences. And it was absolutely common that all of them said, yes, we do activate what is in our minds and in our first and other languages that we bring to the learning space. So that's something we really need to no longer neglect. We need to work on that. That's the first thing. Sorry, Vicky, I thought you were going to say... No, and then the second thing I was going to say really is let's look at the conditions in which we teach. Now, Joan mentioned this already. We are short of teachers. We are short of teachers. And what we need to do is to shore up the teachers we have, really make sure that their experience is valued and that we give them the support. And very often it's about making sure that we're giving them active resources, active opportunities to keep their own languages alive. Because very often they're not able to spend extended periods of lived experience in the country of the language which they're teaching. Their language may be rusty, they may lose confidence. They lose motivation, they leave the classroom. So we need to be thinking about ways in which we nurture our teachers as well as our learners. An international experience for learners is crucial, as we know, but for teachers also. So we need to look after our teachers and make sure that we have a really rich cultural and linguistic environment for our teachers also. Wonderful work done by the ALL, of course, by the Association of Language Learning and other associations. The British Academy is supporting, of course, and the British Council also.
Thanks, Bernadette. Vicky?
Yes, I was going to say, I think another, one thing that we try to do at the British Council is to encourage schools to link with schools in other countries to enable pupils to have that intercultural connection, and also having that experience of talking to young people in other countries can really bring languages to life. I mean, I'm sure many of us can remember the first time you went on the school exchange and you realise, what languages are for, that it's something you can actually use in your life and communicate people. And, that's the light bulb moment that, sets you on the path for languages for the rest of your life. And we need to make sure that young people in the UK can still continue to have those experiences. It's more difficult now, it's more challenging post-Brexit and post-COVID to be able to make those visits and exchanges, but it's still possible to have school connections. And I think having that can be really motivating for language learning, can be really motivating for teachers as well, to have those partnerships with partner teachers overseas. I know your school has a lot of links, doesn't it, in that way?
We have a lot of links. It's a Connecting Classrooms programme, and that programme has meant that pupils have done art projects with their peers in France, Germany and Italy, all at the same time, pupils working together on a project. It might be art to do with rivers of the world, etc. All types of interesting things have happened as a consequence. And it was interesting that during lockdown, in terms of sharing experiences, because of the connections made in the classroom through language teaching, pupils were learning and speaking to each other about their experiences, learning things that could help them as they went through lockdown. And of course, that communication beyond the home, even though they weren't going out, but somewhere that was quite far away, was really interesting for them and supported their well-being, supported their kind of sense of knowing I'm not alone, that I'm going through this with my friends who are abroad and my friends who are here. So you cannot ever underestimate how important those connections are.
And for some of our young people who don't get to leave the city that they live in, I think it really broadens horizons to allow them to have those kinds of contacts.
I just had one time. And of course, for all of you here, it's crucial that we make sure that we facilitate your contact with schools. The cultural institutions, the cultural attaché, all of the extraordinary work that you do and the resources that you bring. Sometimes I feel that many of our schools are not aware of the things that are available. They're not making the connections that they should. So that's why our project in particular, the one that Vicky and I are currently involved in, is reaching out to all of you to make sure that we do make those connections and links, and that the teachers and the learners really do benefit from all of the cultural institutes and the work that you do. So that's really important. Let's not make this evening not give a dividend to us. Let's keep these connections going so that we can really leverage all the support that's available.
And the formal way of making those connections is precisely the consortium that you're directing and that Vicky's very involved in, the National Consortium for Languages Education in England. There are other formal mechanisms in the other UK nations, precisely for scaling up best practice, so that the kind of wonderful initiatives that go on in Jones School can be learnt from, for example, and modelled elsewhere. Is that right?
Can I just
Kasia,
say,
please.
yes, I think this is hugely exciting to hear that there is such program and there are plans to do that. And to hear that at Jones School one can come and can actually sit the exam, the Polish child is amazing. Unfortunately, this is not the experience of the landscape we live in. I can tell from my own personal experience, one of my sons wasn't allowed to actually sit the Polish exam in his school, while the other school, my other son's school, said, yes, bring the other one as well. Yes, so it's all about goodwill and about awareness of awareness. And I would like to actually stop there, because I think not many mainstream schools actually are aware of what's going on. For example, when it comes to our school on Saturdays. There is a lack of connection, lack of knowledge actually between people who are not aware that I've started as a teacher sending letters to head teachers from the schools the kids teaching go to during the week. I actually get replies and saying, "Wow, thank you so much for letting us know." So I feel personally that there is a huge sort of gap there.
Yes.
So if you don't know, how would you allow? Why would you say to a child who wants to sit an exam in your school to sit that exam? So there is this lack of knowledge. There is also a lack of connections between those schools, the Saturday schools and supplementary schools and mainstream schools. So teachers who work in Saturday schools are very rarely, or maybe they are not as often as we would like to be connected to English educational system. Yes. So how do we create these connections? How do we sort of make people aware? A few years ago, there was a situation when the Polish A-level there was a plan to actually axe the subject, and the whole Polish community, I can see some familiar faces, kind of did whatever they could, and raise alarms in lots of different places. And one of the UK education ministers actually visited our school in Wimbledon, because the school I go to is at Wimbledon. He was absolutely amazed. And he admitted actually then that he didn't know that such schools existed. He spoke to young people. Someone said that, and I found it extraordinarily interesting, that you stop learning a language when you're 7. Yes, did I hear it well? 14 or 7 started or 14? So in our school, and in many schools across the supplementary schools, obviously I talk about Polish community, actually the number of children from reception to A-level classes are pretty much the same. Because there is a disqualification as GCSE level, and children are happy to come. In fact, good results at GCSE very often make people stay and make them choose other languages as well in the mainstream school. So. So I think we would love to hear, and this is amazing to hear actually, that there is a plan and possible establishing possible cooperation and collaboration. Yes, so
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, in respect to what you've just said, to be able to teach a child well, all schools need to know who is in their classrooms. And when the children enter our school, amongst the most important questions that we ask is, what languages are spoken at home? Are you able to speak the language? Are you able to go to a supplementary school that can support the language if we're not able to support it? Then we get a lot of intelligence about who and where the supplementary schools are, because they sometimes come and go, others are constant. But then you have intelligence, knowledge, understanding, awareness of what is happening in your school community, which is why I know that we have a lot of children who want to continue with, who would like to be able to do a qualification in Lithuanian, in Latvian. I believe Romanian is on the list. Can't remember now, because we have a large number of Eastern European children who've come into our schools, as well as a lot of our new arrivals who've come to our school via Italy from sometimes countries in Africa and also the Far East.
Thanks so much. We need to wrap up the panel discussion. Yeah.
So my name is Ramona Gönsel, and I'm an associate professor at UCL.
I'm sorry, it's before you speak, you're very welcome to speak, but could someone bring the mic so that people online can hear you? It's a timely intervention because I'm in the process of throwing the discussion open to the audience.
Okay, so yeah, that's fine, thank you. So my name is Ramona Gönsel, and I'm an associate professor in Romanian language at UCL, hence I wanted to really kind of jump in now. Well done, congratulations for the wonderful consortium. We know about it, and we're gonna talk to you. So we run an outreach project covering 3 languages, Romanian, Bulgarian and Ukrainian, with secondary schools in London and in Wales. Funding is small, but I'm sure it has lots of potential. We have lots of data about East European kids across the country. We just don't have the capacity at the moment. The project that we run with 3 teachers has 3 scopes, if you want. They are equally important. One is to improve their languages, because like you said, they sometimes never went to a Romanian or Bulgarian school setting. The other one is to make them proud and remind them what a treasure and wealth they have by speaking their heritage language. And the last and very important one is to introduce a GCSE level, at least in the bigger communities, such as the Romanian community, which is quite large and growing. So I just wanted to tell you that UCL is doing something about that. And we also had a symposium with primary and secondary schools. You might know about it in June with CELCS and CES, where we again talked the kind of topic of languages. So maybe we'll continue the conversation over the wine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very valuable intervention. And so it's very clear what should happen. But it sounds like it's a question of finding the mechanisms, perhaps a whole variety of mechanisms, both local, such as the one that Joan outlined, and more national, such as the one that Bernadette and Vicky are involved in England, to make that happen. And perhaps I can just mention at this point another potential tool to help in this gathering together information, making connections, to use a phrase that was used, is a new portal for languages that you can find just by Googling the Languages Gateway. The Languages Gateway. It's a new tool designed to bring together for parents, teachers, students, learners, researchers, policymakers, all of the information about languages. So you can tell it what you want, and it will point you in the right direction to many, many other websites as organising this vast field. So the Languages Gateway, do Google it. It's not yet really serving that function of making connections between the mainstream and the supplementary sector, but it may be that with some thought it has the potential to do so. So now any other questions or comments from the floor are very welcome. Have the first one over there, please.
Thank you. Bernadette and I go back quite a long way, and I know Vicky as well. I don't want to put a dampener on all the positivity and enthusiasm. I'm a translator. My name's Pamela Miorkas. I'm a translator. I worked for the European Commission as a translator, starting in 1973 when the UK joined the EU. And of course, I'm still crying bitter tears about, the fact that our flag is not up there at the front. In spite of all the tremendous work that's being done and the positivity, I just feel I have to say how I see the landscape. I've been looking at the British Council reports. I read them every time they come out. And the story in British schools is dire. It really is dire. Language learning has gone down and down and down. Fewer and fewer school students are doing foreign languages, French, German, Spanish, let alone some of the other languages. Community languages hardly get a look in. The situation may have changed in recent years, but I remember once going to an event at North London Collegiate, and there was a Japanese girl there. She wanted to do a GCSE in Japanese, which she could do, but she had to do it privately because the school practically couldn't offer it. Because students are not taking languages, they're not going to university to study languages. University language departments have been closing down at a rate of knots over the last few years. You can hardly find a university in the UK now that teaches Russian. One of the languages we should be learning as a nation is Russian. When the Twin Towers thing happened, everybody suddenly woke up to the fact that we didn't have people who spoke Arabic. I'm sure there are some people in the Foreign Office who do speak Arabic, but they're a handful. At the highest level of government, we need to understand, and it's not just the cultural benefits for children at all ages, at all stages, of learning languages, of being able to travel, of communicating, marrying people from other countries. At the highest level of government, the UK has to wake up to the fact that it cannot possibly understand what is going on in the heads of governments across the world if we don't have access to their languages.
Absolutely. Before we thank you very much for that, I'd like to take 3 questions, and then we'll ask the panelists if they have any responses. There was one here and then one over here, I think. Yes.
My name is Clydie. I'm representing the Young European Movement. I'm curious to know how the switch from Erasmus to Turing has affected language learning in particular. I want to get your perspectives as a group.
Thank you. And where was the third one? It was, well, let's take 4, because I'm not sure who's first. First you and then you, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Virgil Blitzo. I'm representing Roma Organization for Training and Advocacy. I would like to draw your attention upon an European language which is in a total decline because we don't have any support, organizational support or state support. It's about Romani language. I would like to know if anything is included in the blueprint paper. And also I would like to ask the European Union representatives to try to think more about supporting the preservation of this language, because the only reason our language it's survived until now is because our communities are very excluded, are very isolated. Now we enter in a process when the institution try to do much more things for our communities, and we enter in a stage where our communities try to organize better themselves to become much active in the democratic societies. So if we don't get any support in preservation of the language, we are in a risk that in few decades the Romani language to die or to become dormant. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And one more question here, and then we'll put the floor to the panel.
Oh, I just wanted to mention the impact of going from the Erasmus funding to touring, because I experienced this in my school. I applied to take my students, who are 56% free school meals, to get a budget so that we could take them on a school trip to Normandy, and we did not get an application. I mean, we did not get the grant from the touring program, whereas one of the criteria was leveling up. So I'm wondering about the transparency of how funding is allocated, because my daughter's school is in a well-to-do area, and they got their funding to take some students to Korea, but my school is in a deprived area, and we didn't get the funding. So I'm really wondering how it is in the allocation of grants.
Thank you very much, all the questioners. So we have a question about the direness of the situation, a question about the Romani language, and two questions about Turing. Any responses? Vicky?
Well, one thing about the direness of the situation, and then Bernadette will take over, is that one very positive initiative from the last few years has been the development of the cross-government languages group. So there are representatives from most of government departments, including the British Council and other arm's length bodies, that meet together to talk about languages issues and have a range of special interest groups. And we now all have senior champions, which has just been developed from different government departments. So hopefully this will start to build something a little more strategic across government. I mean, as part of this, I'm on the schools outreach part of the cross-government group. And today, for example, we held a joint event with GCHQ, where it was a virtual event, but we had 3,000 pupils listening to people from GCHQ and British Council talking about how important languages were and how they use them in their careers. And we got very good feedback from that. So you can see that's one group. There are other groups looking at how linguists should be treated, and be used across government departments. So I think that's a really positive initiative. So you've continue on that.
Yes, well, I can build on that. Certainly GCHQ has been very active, so has the MOD. Government departments are aware that languages and cultural understanding are crucial. They really are. And I think, despite, Pamela, I totally understand your frustration and despair to see how languages have declined. We now have signs of recovery. We have an initiative now which will, over the next 3 years, build capacity with our teachers, extend opportunities to more learners. Levelling up was mentioned here. It's about equity. It's about ensuring that those young people have an experience which is of high quality and is worthwhile. And we will be working on that. We have metrics. The rigour is there, as they like to say. I mean, all of these words develop a new meaning, don't they, when they're used by governments? So we have rigorous criteria, and we will be measured, and we will be accountable, and we will achieve, because we have your support, don't we? And we have our vision, and we have our beliefs, and we have our strategies, and we have our pedagogic understanding, and we will turn this around.
I have to say, though, in terms of turning things around, what schools are doing is going to be crucial in this. And I think sometimes the discussions are going on across government departments, and it'd be helpful if they reached out to the schools to learn more. The work Vicky does at the British Council in terms of gathering information about language trends is a very, very helpful indicator. But possibly the opportunity to speak directly, whether that be online, about some of the things that are supporting us and the others that are defeating us or have been trying to defeat us. We're still working towards making sure we're not defeated, can be addressed, because gaining that understanding of the practicalities and things that might have been implemented or proposed with goodwill without understanding the knock-on effects within a school is very often an issue that stops things from moving forward.
Yes.
And very often also, regrettably, funding is an issue, particularly in schools that have got high numbers of children who have socio-economically deprived.
And on that note about spreading information from the centre to schools, I remember that Language Trends showed last time that awareness of Turing is quite low in schools. And so I'm presuming while it's very frustrating to hear that what sound like very strong applications might not have been successful, and I doubt that anyone here can comment on the actual criteria by which they're allocated. Nonetheless, one imagines that the greater the volume of applications overall, the stronger the case to grow the pot, if you like. But at that point, with some regret, because I can see that there are lots of other people who want to ask questions and put comments, I need to draw this section of the evening to a close, but not without thanking very warmly again the EU delegation to the UK and the Aspen Institute UK for creating this wonderful opportunity today through the exhibition and this event to think about these issues. Also thanking the wonderful audience for your questions and comments, and above all your panel, I invite you to thank with applause, but then don't go away, because we have a really exciting further treat in store straight after. So first of all, the panel. Thank you. So Bernadette mentioned poetry, and it would be remiss to leave without hearing some, ideally multilingual, and we're thrilled to have two poets here who are going to give us short readings or performances. The first is Bella Cox, an internationally acclaimed artist who is a poet, a performer, a workshop facilitator, an event host, producer. She's worked in Kenya, in South Africa, and around the UK. Over to you, Bella.
Thank you, first of all, so much for having me here. It's very exciting to be in a room full of so many people who are doing such wonderful things to do with language. As mentioned in my short introduction, thank you very much, I've been fortunate enough to live in various different countries, and so many different languages, many different countries are sort of form my definition of home. So this piece that I'm going to read for you now is entitled Sikiliza, which in Swahili means to listen. It's the title poem from my upcoming pamphlet, which is out next month. And it's a 3-part piece, and it goes like this. July is baking this London balcony, Barcelona beach, Nairobi jacaranda-lined street to sweltering. Parked outside Johannesburg's market theatre, a London ambulance wailing, you hear Vulindlela playing. Someone swears in French. You are circling Geneva's 3-legged chair. On Westland's roundabout, a street kid named Moses begs for mandazi money. Oyster card ready. A shirtless man names you Guapissima. Boerewors and onions sizzling. The next train will arrive in 2 minutes. You barter for a Maasai necklace. 2 kites swoop and seize your samosa. You swear in English. Your friends are laughing in a nearby pub, tavern, chiringuito. There is always beer. The road ahead is long and grey. To the left, a sudden wall. Red graffiti scroll, "You are here." 2. The scream of sirens wakes you nightly. Here, dead bees lie forgotten prayers on the pavement. Maybe disorientation caused their death. The same smoke that catches in your throat here, where the next train to arrive at platform 8 will be your descent into madness. Only birds woke you in the home before. Which home do we mean? Here is anywhere you do not wish to be. You ache for the scent of jasmine every day until you have it, and then it's mosquitoes that bite you back into yearning. Silly Western things like app-dialed food deliveries and fast internet speeds. Did you know it should take less than 72 hours for relocated bees to acclimatize? You don't even have jet lag to blame for your grumpiness. Your mother says gratitude is the key to happy. She wears her emigrations like medallions. Her voice, the same resonant hum as honey, thrums in 7 languages. 3. You are not fluent, but your tongue puzzles itself across 3 different languages. Les notes audio de tes amis on repeat, a patchwork of comfort accents. No importa where you are, home, si o hapa. You are accustomed to being incomprendida. Permanent settlement n'existe pas. Even choosing a binary sexuality feels like choosing nyumba moja. Choosing one home feels like losing another, but you learn. Unajifunza, tu llamas a tu cuerpo hogar. Treat its many sensitivities as sacre. Anoint the walls of your skin with mafuta ya nazi. Make it ritual. Learn le langage de ton corps. Sikiliza for your gut. Bougez à votre guise. Pay attention to your blood. Become cartographer of your many states. Aquí puedes construir your own mosaic. Hapa, you are all that you need. Ici, you need not speak. Thank you.
Many thanks. That was wonderful. I'd like to introduce our second poet, Michel Vidon, a French poet, published in a range of different kinds of settings, an MFL teacher and a curator based in the south of England. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I was really excited to hear what you were saying about all the good stuff and the Doom speech as well, because I'm a teacher, so I know what's happening in the schools. I teach part-time, and the rest of the time I do poetry in schools and multilingual poetry, bilingual poetry. So, and I was really pleased with what you said about some schools that really take on the home languages and give pride. Someone said here with the languages, and that's something that's not done enough. So in my workshops, I like to get all the languages, the MFL languages, but the home languages, although the distinction I don't like, but that's another discussion, and to have them as equal. So yes, I'm going to stop talking now. So this first poem is a manifesto, a kind of describes what happens in my head when I write in a poem. Anybody speaks French here? All right, so anybody else just enjoy the ride. Je commence en français and finish in English. I cannot always rhyme avec des rimes riches. Let me start in English pour finir en français. C'est parfois difficile to rhyme with wordplay. Le cul en deux chaises, torn between choices, pas d'amour du drapeau, no allegiances. Ball in the Shana shop, je fais irruption dans ta langue. Trample the way comme maths, dans mes poèmes, j'harangue. Je rêve des expériences localisées. My dreams are tailored to where I am. No matter who or what they say, tout est en VO, corps et âme. I dream, localized dreams de sur-mesure où que je me trouve, peu importe qui j'imagine, the needle follows the groove. Never shoehorning, j'aime faire des liens between sound and meaning. Jamais je force la main, j'enfonce des portes ouvertes. Didn't even slice bread. J'en ferai pas une dissert, not the sharpest in the shed. Je m'appelle Michael, Holy Grail Seeker, Languages pell-mell. De trésors, le chasseur, linguiste et chercheur de ces bons mots drôles, de rhyme connoisseur, they call me Michael. Essence migrante, errance glissante, descente sifflante, démence immense, mélange puissant, mes langues immenses, le champ métissage n'est que nourrissant. Show up and chip in, set up and step in, make it up, dive in, keep up the good work, mix up and give up? No, mix in, give in, don't dwell on, carry on. I hear say I'm French, through and through, que je fais des jaloux, des voyous de chez vous, que je suis un gros ouf, touche à tout, manitoufle à l'ego, je m'étouffe. I hear say I'm French through and through, but let me share my worldview. Flat-headed, I can drive a Phillips screw. Anarchist, I can wait in a queue, and I know it takes two to misconstrue. La langue de Molière, j'en fais pas un fétiche, and you won't hear me speak the king's English. There's no such thing as une belle langue. En faire les louanges, it feels wrong. There's only people utilizing their tongue quand ils parlent, quand ils chantent, quand ils rappent. Saying a beautiful tongue, ça veut rien dire. Singing its praises, j'y crois pas. There's only people qui s'expriment when they speak, when they sing, too haut, too bas. Dans ma tête, ça se perd like laces in a pair. The two ends of my brain make a knot, une aubaine. Getting lost in my head comme une paire de lacets. Les deux bouts de mon vaussaire font un nœud, a bargain. It's right there on the nose. Sur le bout de ton nez. En français, en anglais, c'est pour moi la même chose. Ose, l'osmose, ose, ose. Tap your red shoes together, let's travel. Rhyme other with bonheur. You have to mix them up, en faire un mélange. Although sometimes I'm scared because je veux pas qu'on pense. I'm the one who's laissez-faire about meaning and savoir-faire. Il faut les mélanger, bring them together. Même si parfois ça me fait peur, cause I don't want to be seen, comme le mec qui victimise le sens des mots, ses origines. Let us play with languages, bring the missing letter to the word, add the L of languages, bear the love of words in the world. Allez, jouons avec le verbe, envoie tes vers ton vocabulaire. Le L des langues, lis la terre, amène l'amour des mots dans le monde. Bear the love of words in the world. Amène l'amour des mots dans le monde. Bear the love of words in the world. Thank you. All right. I know you're all really thirsty, but I really want to do another one. Can I? Yes. I'm a rule breaker. All right. All right. I was told one poem, and I came with two. All right, so the next poem, it lends itself to working with kids. It's about animals. It's inspired from Les Fables de La Fontaine. Any La Fontaine fans in here? All right, I'm going to do a little test here, actually, because every kid in France learns the Fables de La Fontaine by heart, recitation, which is going to go really well with the new GCSE, with the dictation, all that kind of nonsense. All right? Now, let's not get political here, all right? All right, so I learned this when I was a kid, right? But I never knew that it was actually a versification of Aesop fables, Greek. Now here, people that know about fables, Les Fables de La Fontaine, did you know that it was actually a rip-off from Aesop? You knew. Anybody French knows that? My point. All right. All right. So it's called La cigale et la fourmi, the cicada and the ant. Oh, by the way, in English, it's supposed to be the grasshopper and the ant, but I looked it up and grasshoppers don't make sound. So it's cicada. La cigale. Yes? You want to do the cicada sound? Let's go. Dans le sud de la France, in the French Riviera, the soundscape is the sound of the cicada. Dans le sud de la France, in the French Riviera, la bande originale est le chant des cigales. La cigale, cicada, avait chanté tout l'été. In summer she sang every day. Mais à l'arrivée de l'hiver, she chanted in despair, de mauvaise humeur when came the winter. Nothing to eat, pas même une mite, not one little bit, le ventre vide. La cigale, cicada, went to the ant, her neighbor. Elle alla voir la fourmi, the hardest worker in the hood, la plus grosse bosseuse du tiers-quart. Elle lui demanda, she asked, hand on heart, help me, j'ai une faim de loup, aide-moi, I ran out of food. A corn of the cob, a few grains of wheat, quelques brins de blé, épis de maïs, pour que je survive, with rye and oatmeal for me to survive jusqu'à mars-avril. I'll pay you back before harvest. C'est ma promesse, and with interest. Je vous rendrai tout avant le mois d'août. You won't rebuke sans aucun doute. Je suis pas menteuse. I am a bug of my word. I like this one. La fourmi est une pince. Not keen to land is the ant. Un bien mince défaut. It may be a only flaw. Et la voilà qui grince. Que faisiez-vous quand il faisait beau? Where were you at when I was at sous le soleil with a sun cap? Rolling in the dough pour ramener l'oseille. I was out there, it was boiling, I was toiling. Vous aviez piscine? Out there chilling. La cigale, cicada, snapback, ricana. Du matin tôt jusque tard dans la nuit. Night and day and late and early. Je chantais et j'en suis fier. I sang for anyone and everywhere. The ant replied. Quelle belle carrière que d'être chanteuse. Singing. Well, I'm happy for you. Alors maintenant, faites la danseuse. You can now dance, can't you? La cigale criarde, the flashy cicada, la fourmi perfide, the ant who's stingy. I reckon they need each other really. Work is all well and good. But sans la musique, on serait où? Without music, where would we be? Thank you. Merci.
Many thanks, Michael, and for showing us what it's all about and why we're here. And just to invite you all very warmly now to a multilingual drinks reception, which will happen just here, with regrets that the people joining us online can't be here too, but we hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.